George Carlin said, "When it comes to God's existence, I'm not an atheist, and I'm not an agnostic. I'm an acrostic. The whole thing puzzles me." Here's one for the mathematicians. Why can't atheists solve exponential equations? Because they don't believe in higher powers. You can't disprove the existence of God. You have to take it on faith. A little Unitarian Universalist girl was sitting on the curb in front of her house with tears in her eyes. An older woman happened upon her and asked her why she looked so sad. The girl replied, "My kitty cat died." Trying to be helpful, the woman said to the little girl, "I know you're sad, but your kitty cat is with Jesus." The girl crinkled her nose for a moment and said, "What would Jesus want with a dead cat?" Did he really just tell that? 3 children were talking about their religions. "I'm a Catholic," said one, "and our symbol is the cross." "I'm Jewish," said the second. "Our symbol is the Star of David." The third child said, "I'm a Unitarian Universalist, and our symbol is a candle in a cocktail glass." Religion is a difficult thing to understand. It's a serious topic with some serious repercussions. I think of someone who adapted a phrase from the gun control debate and quipped, Gods don't kill people. People with gods kill people." We poked some fun this morning at the topic of belief and hopefully poke some fun at ourselves as well. I have a copy of a comic strip. It's called Non Sequitur by Wiley Miller. God is sitting with Jay Leno on the talk show, and he says, "I think my best creation was the sense of humor. The irony, of course, is that the people who claim to believe in me the most are the ones least likely to have one." Make of it what you will, but I know Unitarian Universalists like to laugh. In fact, the only thing that we like better is to argue about religion. I heard someone making fun one time of the Mormon name, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. You know, sounds rather cumbersome. Until it was pointed out to them that our name has more syllables. The Unitarian Universalist Church. Now, I know some of you are sitting there counting it out. Go ahead, it's true. Check it out. If the name of your church is longer than your arm, you may be a UU. If you find yourself rewriting a church survey rather than answering it, you may be a UU. If you have to use interpretive dance to explain your faith, you may be a UU. If you take your day planner to church instead of a Bible, you may be a UU. If you call up your minister in the middle of the night, panicking because you are starting to believe in God, you may be a UU. Unitarian Universalist minister and author, Dr. Harry Meserve, whose work appears in our hymnal and elsewhere, once said this: "It is a curious error to suppose you can carry on effectively a great liberal tradition while remaining ignorant of the beliefs and achievements of the people who have handed that tradition over to you." What did Dr. Meserve just say? He said we ought to know our religious history. He said if you want to live an effective spiritual life, you need to work at it. My sermon today is the third in a series of 6, which cover what our Unitarian Universalist bylaws call the sources of our living tradition. This list of sources, which is a part of what I passed around, is part of a covenant held in trust by every congregation in the Unitarian Universalist fold. If and when we officially join the UUA, it is the commitment that we as a congregation will be asked to embrace. In my opinion, every member of this church should make themselves familiar with our principles and our sources. In my first sermon of this series, which you will note incidentally, I am not doing in order as they are listed. I've covered Christianity and world religions, and now we're doing humanism. I handed out those pocket guides, and this is what they say. And I'm going to give you the abridged version because this is what helps me to memorize them. Direct experience which moves us to renewal. Words and deeds which challenge us to confront. Religious wisdom which inspires us to ethical life. Jewish and Christian teachings which call us to love. Humanist teachings which counsel us to reason. And earth-centered traditions which instruct us to live in harmony with nature. Today, we talk about humanism. Humanist teachings which counsel us to heed the guidance of reason and the results of science and warn us against idolatries of the mind and spirit. Now, even though we have joked a bit today about atheism versus belief or faith versus doubt, let me reiterate what Kevin mentioned, that humanism is not atheism. In fact, the original authors of the Humanist Manifesto, written in 1933, who were largely Unitarians and Universalists, opened with the following statement of affirmation. And let me call your attention to the table here where I have copies of both the original manifesto written in 1933 and the third. It's been through 2 revisions. The third was written in 2003. So if you're interested in a copy, I have them on the table. This was the first article of the original manifesto. Religious humanists regard the universe as self-existing and not created. The very first word, religious humanists. We are reading today from the original because it is the one which affected our religious development as Unitarian Universalists. It is the reason that it is listed on our sources. I've enlisted some volunteers today to help me demonstrate to you just a sampling of the message in that manifesto. There are 15 articles, and we're going to share an abridged version of just a few of them. And so, who has the second? Someone has the second article. Number 2. I apologize, I put it on Elizabeth and she's having trouble with her voice. Humanism believes that humankind is a part of nature and that we have emerged as a result of a continuous process. Who has the third? If you don't mind standing up, they can hear you probably a little better. And maybe turn to the group. The dualism of mind and body must be rejected. Who has the fifth article?
Humanism asserts that the nature of the universe depicted by modern science makes unacceptable supernatural authority or cosmic guarantees for human values. The way to determine the existence and value of any and all realities is by means of intelligent inquiry. Religion must formulate its hopes and plans in the light of a scientific spirit and method.
And number 6? That kind of covers what Kevin was talking about. It's not just atheism versus belief. It's theism, deism, modernism, and other varieties of thought. Okay, number 7. A clouding of the distinction between the sacred and the secular. How about the 14th? A socialized and cooperative economic order. This was preached as early as 1913 by Unitarians. Humanists demand a shared life in a shared world. Make you glad you're here this morning? 15th and last. Nice and loud, Skeeter. Amen. Does that sound maybe a little atheistic to you? Maybe to some groups that it challenges, it might seem so. The signatories to this manifesto were not anti-religious atheists attempting to destroy the church. They were 9 Unitarian and 1 Universalist minister, a rabbi, religious professors, church leaders among the 34 original signers. They wanted to actually save religion from what it has largely become today: irrelevant denial in the face of modern understanding. Listen to what they wrote in the preamble. The time has come for widespread recognition of the radical changes in religious beliefs throughout the modern world. The time is past for mere revision of traditional attitudes. Science and economic change have disrupted the old beliefs. Religions the world over are under the necessity of coming to terms with new conditions created by a vastly increased knowledge and experience. In every field of human activity, the vital movement is now in the direction of a candid and explicit humanism. This could have been written yesterday. It is amazing to me that in the 21st century we are fighting the same tired arguments with people denying reality in order to defend their beliefs. And the masses have lost interest and fled. The churches are emptying. Religion is truly a powerful force, but not in the way its adherents would understand. The Humanist Manifesto continues. There is great danger of a final and, we believe, fatal identification of religion with doctrines and methods which have lost their significance and which are powerless to solve the problem of human living in the 20th century. In his wonderful book, The Epic of Unitarianism, Original Writings from the History of Liberal Religion, David Park noted that for many, the humanist-theist controversy consisted of an argument of God or no God. For the humanists, however, it was more truly a debate over the evidence and merit of the natural versus supernatural interpretations of reality. The movement of our history from a specifically Christian faith in its origins as the separate Unitarian and Universalist denominations to a broader humanistic one was, needless to say, not a smooth transition. Nor was it without its detractors. Today we face those from without who would argue our principles. At that time, the detractors were from within our faith movement. Unitarianism during the 19th century, David Park wrote in his book, had become an acceptable religion. It was different, to be sure, but nothing heretical. We were in what he called a contented slumber. The peacefulness ended with the advent of religious humanism, which Park called the most significant theological development of the 20th century. Two Unitarian ministers came along, Dietrich and Reese. One had been expelled as a heretic from the Reformed Church. The other was a former Baptist. They began preaching humanism in 1913, a message of humanity's uniqueness in an indifferent universe. Reese presented a Harvard talk in which he said, the center of spiritual gravity is shifted from the supernatural to the human. Liberalism, he said, is building a religion that would not be shaken even if the thought of God were outgrown. We indeed built such a religion, but not without the earthquake. One minister responded that he would rather have his right arm severed than to take God away from the people. David Park reported that an alarming number of Unitarian congregations failed during the first third of the 20th century. In 1934, and remember, this manifesto came out in 1933 as an optimistic response and look at human capability and human intelligence and understanding. What was going on at that time in our history? Depression, wars, a lot of things to make us anything but optimistic about human nature. In 1934, the Unitarians formed something called a Commission on Appraisal, which is still active in the UUA today. The Commission on Appraisal studies the work of our association and recommends needed changes in policies, programs, and organization. Its very first assignment upon being created was to determine whether amid all of this upheaval, quote, Unitarianism has any real function to perform in the modern world. If so, what sort of churches will these be? It's a question we do well to ask ourselves some 85 years later. This is how our Commission on Appraisal answered in 1935. In the first place, the Commission reported, these churches will be emancipated from the tendency to set themselves up as small, elect, superior groups of men and women to whom by some mysterious dispensation an exclusive gift of truth has been granted. They will cultivate an intense sense of fellowship within their own ranks, yes, but they will be keenly aware of the worldwide aspects of their liberal faith. It's hard sometimes to not feel a bit exclusive when we have it so good. Amen? When we worked so hard and struggled and searched and found a faith where we can finally be ourselves and grow in spirit and truth and question and doubt and learn. We start to think that somehow we deserve this, that we earned it, that we own it, rather than understanding we are part of the interdependent web of all existence. In the second place, the Commission concluded, our churches will be thoroughly committed to the practice of democracy. They will be zealous in their determination to safeguard the full rights of minorities within their ranks. This is work we carry on to this very day. You will hear a ton about it when you go to General Assembly. In the third place, the Commission said, they will be characterized by a fresh discovery of the importance of leadership. Oh, how we disdain authority. In the fourth place, there will gradually emerge a body of common opinion which will be recognized as the common possession of the whole group. In other words, we will be mission focused, avoiding with utmost care any suggestion of an official creed, and yet insisting at every point upon the right of minorities, majorities, and the total group to change their minds as knowledge advances. They will nevertheless be unafraid to say, these are things which today we believe to be true. The Commission in 1935 concluded that finally these churches of ours will affirm their belief that religion is futile and sterile unless it has direct and effective bearing upon the problems of human society. They will be unsparing in their criticism of the evils and injustices existing in the world, and they will work unceasingly for a better social order. And so it came to pass. And this is why I am Unitarian Universalist.